on this computer. Okay, cool. Okay, so tell me who you are and what you do.
So my name is Gemma Morizzo, and I am a birth doula in the Sacramento area.
Yay, awesome. So what has it been like to be a birth doula in the Sacramento area since March?
My gosh, so this is a crazy time. I don't even know how to answer that question. I think the community is all over the place right now. All doulas are doing sort of different things, and I think there's some creative things happening. But also, it's hard. You know, there's things are slow for some people, and I think busy for others. The beginning of the pandemic was tragedy. We all had to call our clients, and people who saw only the in-person model, the doulas included. We had no idea, have never given any thought to being remote doulas. That was not a thing. And so in a moment, we just sort of saw our entire worlds crumble because the hospitals changed the visitor policy. So we get locked out and had to call our clients who expected us to be in person and say, I'm sorry, I can't support you in person, but hey, let's do a video call in labor. And it was really hard. I mean, that was the worst professional week probably ever of my life. It was so hard. And I think lots of us had clients that beautifully rolled with it. Plenty of doulas lost a ton of money and gave money back we lost a lot of work that week. And then we figured out we had to go virtual. And I think most doulas jumped on that bandwagon pretty beautifully. I'm a DONA certified doula. And so DONA pretty quickly rolled out a cool training. But of course, that training was sort of a work in progress too, because no one had really done this before. So I thought it was kind of interesting to watch what was going on in the community to figure out how to best serve these birthing families that needed us. And I think it depends on the doula that you ask. For me, it has been fairly successful. I think that the virtual model completely works. There are things that I miss, of course, but given the circumstances, I think every woman should still have a doula. And I think that the virtual model is the safest way from a COVID perspective to have your doula present. And there's many reasons why I feel that way, but I think a lot of doulas haven't enjoyed it. It feels weird to them, and that's okay. That's like totally valid. And I have had some births where I felt like I was less useful than I would be if I was in the room. But for the most part, I think when you utilize the technology to the fullest and all parties are well prepped for the experience that is about to unfold, the virtual model is beautiful. And so I've been pleasantly surprised with that. And I hope that, I'm curious after COVID, what comes of that? Do we just ditch the virtual model, or will some people want that? I mean, I could argue some people might want a virtual doula instead of an in-person doula for many different reasons. Maybe their partner is worried about having the doula in the room. The doula in the remote model almost feels like that's your expert to call when it's hitting the fan and you're panicking. And I think a lot of people like that they have somebody to back them up if they need it. And then if they don't, they're cool.
Right.
So I think we're all using it in different ways, but it's been nice to see. It's nice to now be at a place in the pandemic where we're on the back end now, and now we're all used to the virtual model. I have my system. I know how to coach people through this. I mean, we're always fine tuning, but I feel like it is no longer a panic virtual doula situation. It's much more of this is how it works. Let me help you get the most out of me as you can.
So how does it work? How would a person get the most out of you that they can?
So I think we are all doing it differently. How I am doing it is 100% remote. So, we all offer prenatals and postpartum visits. I'm doing those completely remote. I've added a prenatal. I used to do 2. I found that the partners needed more coaching because I see now the partnership between the doula and the partner is really powerful. And that has always been a cool connection in the birth room. But now that the doulas aren't in the birth room, it is like, it's so necessary to have that connection is really real now, in a way that I think wasn't as intense before. So I added a third prenatal that I kind of call, like, I joke that that's sort of the partner training meeting.
Yep.
So that the partners can walk in feeling like they know how to do the hip squeeze. They know how to take a rebozo and wrap it around a birthing person, right? They know how to do certain comfort measures. It helps us talk through on Zoom, get sort of the quirks out so that we understand each other's even just rhythm speaking to each other, right? Like, because when labor happens, you want to already have that connection. You don't want to be getting to know you anymore. And so the cool part, so the prenatals didn't feel that different. Like, I think it's easy to talk to people over Zoom. And other than adding the third prenatal. Once labor starts, that's the big difference, right? Is that we are no longer in the hospital room. So how I describe it is, you get to the hospital room, you open your medium, you open your laptop, your iPad, your phone, whatever it is, and you put it on the rolling table, the little food table in the hospital room. And essentially the doula is just rolled around the room, right? So we're still there for 12 hours or however long. We are just being rolled around the room. What I found like interesting almost immediately was that I felt very connected to the birth. That took me by surprise. Like, I felt that I was in the room with my laboring people. And I felt that it would, originally in the beginning, I was worried it would feel less connected. But I definitely felt connected immediately. I was able to gauge contractions. I was able to see her positioning. I was able to, even you can feel the mood in the room, right? Like if the lights are too bright, or if the nurses are talking really loud, or you still sense all of that over Zoom. And so the difference is, you can't solve it without using your voice or your fingers, right? So meaning texting.
Yep.
So it becomes a combination of vocalizing, like helping with breathing techniques or making a recommendation, or often texting the partner. And this is where the connection with the partner comes in. The video helps me see it, but often I'm texting the partner to say, hey, try the hip squeeze. And or try this position. She's needing a little help at the front end of the contraction. Help her with staying grounded by doing A, B, and C. And so it's almost like in their pocket, they have this they can whip out their phone, see a helpful tip, and then put it back. And so that's been really interesting. So, for me personally, I hole up in my closet at home. I have a fairly large closet, and that's like my birth room. I have like a sleeping mat. I bring in snacks and water, and just like I'm at a birth, and I stay in there for the entirety of the birth. And so in theory, I'm just being wheeled around the room. And I think honestly, by that point, often women are in active labor. Their eyes are closed. They're like in their body at that point, right? They're past the point usually where they're their normal selves, right? They're now like in labor land. And once you hit labor land, I'd be curious what my clients would say, but it feels to me like they can hear me. And I don't know that they don't know that I'm not with them. Like, because they're in this zone. Like, they're not really aware of me even when I'm there, right? Like, they're just like rocking and swaying and vocalizing and doing what it is that laboring people do.
Yes.
And so that's the part where I think people underestimate the virtual option, because by the time you really need your doula, for most people, it's active labor. And active labor, you're in a zone. So that has felt really cool to me. So yeah, I think I'm just present in a very similar way. I'm just not physically using my hands. And the nurses have been really I think that the nurses have a great amount of empathy from what I can tell. For women who wanted their doulas. And I think that they know that this is a weird pandemic world. And the nurses so far have been really helpful, often more helpful in this situation, because I think they feel like, oh, that's a bummer. This woman wanted a doula. She can't have her doula. So they are like, they say hi to me. Like I talk in the prenatals about I should be introduced, right? Like make me part of your team so that the nurses interact with me and we are all one cohesive unit helping the laboring person. So that's been really interesting. And then at some point there's a baby and then I kind of almost awkwardly sneak off and hang up. And then we switch to tech support. I check in with them, give them some moments, and which is what I would do after I leave the hospital in person. So yeah, for me, it's mostly, it works more so than it doesn't. And it has a lot to do with how you set up the laboring couple. I think you just have to, it's all in those prenatals. There's so much information in those prenatals. And I think that's the part too that people forget about doula care, is that it's not just what happens in the hospital room. It's like, in theory, more than half of our job is setting them up for success ahead of time so that when they walk into the hospital room, they are empowered, they understand informed consent, they understand what the options are in front of them, and that they really are the most important person in the room, right? So yeah, the prenatals are so much of what we do.
Yeah, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So you said every woman should have a doula or
Yeah.
something along those lines.
Yes.
Well, how would you describe why? What do you?
Oh my gosh. I think that everybody needs strong support when they are laboring. And if you are lucky enough to have a smooth labor, you don't know that that's what's going to happen, right? So sometimes I think what helps women have smooth labors is just knowing that they have support, right? Like just that gives them the confidence to help things not hit the fan, right? I questioned it. So I have 3 kids and I had a doula at all 3 of my births. They were all drastically different experiences. And on my second and my third, I questioned it like both times because I thought, well, I know what I'm doing. I know what to expect. I know the information. And boy, that would have been a really bad decision. I am so thankful for my doulas because women just need support. Like it's really that simple. The partners, God bless them, but they don't know birth. Like we are not a culture that knows birth. And so I think this is something that people do once in their lifetime, twice, 3 times. Like obviously some women go beyond that, but it's not an experience that we celebrate, unfortunately. I think in our society, it's not something we talk about in a healthy way. And so we have all this fear messaging and like we don't almost, it's not as sacred as it really should be, right? And so because of that, we're in this system that is really can be hard and tricky, and all the systems are different. That hospital has this way and this one has that way. And so the doula has like this great cohesive view of birth, of what natural birth should be. And then how might it be messed with in any given system, right? And then we can help make sure, or I don't want to say make sure because we're not a magic tool, right?
Right.
Plenty of our clients have bad experiences, not because of us, hopefully, but like hard labor is just hard labor and birth trauma is birth trauma. And that all still happens even with a doula. But I think you set yourself up for much more success by having the support of somebody in the room that is not emotionally attached to you, that just has a balanced head and kind of sits there and says, it's normal. It's all good. You're fine. Your partner just doesn't know about birth. They love you, but they don't know birth, right? And so that's the doula really knows that experience. And so it's worth a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think that's what's tricky in the pandemic now, is that I think most women either want you in person, and there are plenty of doulas who will still do in person. I'm not one of them. And a few hospitals have, the policies open up and let us back in, and then they shut us out, and then they let us back in. So there's been some back and forth. I have stayed remote this whole time. Um, but I think that there's plenty of people who want a doula and assume they can't have a doula because the hospital isn't allowing them. And then that's it. Like they don't
Yes.
assume that doulas are remote. And that's sort of, I think, the saddest part about this is that I don't think that's correct. I think that the clients that I have helped hopefully are happy that they had me by their side, even if it was remote. And I wish that there almost should be a public service campaign of, you can still hire a doula.
Yes.
And I wish the nurses, I wish they were all spreading that message, because you can still have that support. And most women have no idea. Even I am working with a repeat client next month. And even they were like, we just assumed we couldn't have you. And only because I got their Christmas card and she was pregnant, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great, blah, blah, blah. And that started the conversation, right? But the assumption was, this is a pandemic. They don't allow you in, so we can't have you. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yes.
It's a tricky time, I think.
Totally. What other challenges have you noticed for families who are having babies right now?
Gosh, I mean, the village, just everybody's so isolated, right? So I think this is a really weird time for that, right? Like, I think a lot of families that I am watching are still bringing in their moms or their dads. Sort of, I don't know. I mean, I think that some people are choosing to stay still super isolated. And I think other people are just choosing to forego that and say, I'm going to bring in my mom and just let that roll, which obviously brings in, from a COVID risk perspective, there's risk in that. I think that's just an added stress. I couldn't imagine having to deal with a pandemic and feel isolated and have to question things like, just freely seeing care providers, right? I need to see a lactation consultant. I need to see you name it, right? Any specialist. It's all sort of more risk, right? I mean, I know personally, every time my kids leave the house, I'm assessing, is this necessary? Is this important? Should they like how like, oh my, is this really, should we be doing this? I can't imagine, for especially how I was as a new mom, which was very much, it brought out a lot of anxiety for me. So I couldn't imagine doing that during a pandemic. So I worry about these new moms. I think even if they aren't thinking they're stressed out, I feel like maybe subconsciously there's this is traumatic. There's an underlying level of stress that I think everyone has, even if they're not allowing themselves to be aware of it. Right. So, yeah. And I think all of us, those moms that hire doulas, get an added benefit of, like, we are their village. Again, even if we're remote, like, it's the person to call when you're like, clearly I'm starving my baby. Clearly this latch is never going to happen. And we are the big sister, right? Like, we are the ones that more so than not are just like, you're okay. It's okay. This is okay. Or how can I help you? Right? Like, then you need a lactation consultant or, a therapist or whatever it is. So, but this is a rough time. I mean, postpartum hormones are no joke. So dealing with that during a pandemic is just, I mean, I'm halfway crazy all the time, I feel like, because of the pandemic. I couldn't imagine adding, adding in postpartum hormones. So,
totally.
And you already feel like you're not well skilled enough to be a new parent in particular, right? Like, you're never going to prepare yourself for that.
Totally. Yes.
No matter how many books you read.
Yes. So how would you describe what a birth doula does?
I would say emotional support. We're the emotional support, right? So we're not the physical in terms of, we're not doing vaginal exams and heartbeats, and but we are physical from from a pain management perspective. And so we very much are hands-on people, like, and every doula is different with her vibe, right? Like, I think some doulas are the calm, cool, and collected, sit in the corner and hold space doula. And another doula is very physical and is all about the hip squeezes. That tends to be me. Everybody doulas differently, which is what
Yeah.
I love. And this is why we say when people interview us, I think every doula says, we are all different. Like, you are organically hiring me and how I doula. And that to me is really cool, right? Like, I have a number of doula colleagues that I have mad respect for. And I always wish that I could go into the room and see how they doula. I wish there was more of a mentoring program with that, of like learning skills from each other. But also, you can't make yourself be somebody else, right? Like, like, my energy is just my energy. So it's interesting. So, but overall, what doulas do is emotional and physical support. We hold space, we are present, we are the hand holders in the labor experience. And we're the ones that I think we're kind of the glue that sort of connects all the pieces, right? You've got your OB coming in and out, or your midwife coming in and out. You have the nurse coming in and out. Your partner's with you in a very emotional way. And then you have your doula who's with you in a very birth focused way. And so those two are a really powerful combo.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what kinds of families do you think are most likely to gravitate towards your style or your philosophy?
It's funny. I have been very intrigued as like, as long as I have been a doula, I've been curious about, like, who is my person, who seeks me out, right? Like,
Yes.
and I don't feel that I have control over that, actually. Meaning, I don't purposefully, like, what you see on my website is what you get. That I have not changed my website. I actually do need to go change my website. I want to just tweak it, right? But like I wasn't making conscious choices to seek out a certain client, right?
Yes.
Because I know some people will do that, right? Like, they have discovered who their client is and they're going to target that, right? I have not done any work on that level. And yet I tend to get mostly hospital births. I get a lot of first timers. And I get a lot of people that say, you sound like you have a flexibility with the epidural. And so I have a lot of people that want to do it naturally, but are like, kind of on the fence. And they really feel strongly about not being judged about that, which, by the way, they should never be judged about that. But I think that that's a touch point in the doula world, that I think the misconception is that doulas are natural birth people and only natural birth people. I mostly don't know a single doula that I feel would ever judge a woman for getting an epidural, so that's interesting, because I think most people out there that are not birth workers would say, like, be careful about that, right? Like, you don't want somebody that's going to judge you. You don't want, but really none of us do that. I have had an epidural, and I have also done natural childbirth. And I go into that a little bit on my website. And I think that is maybe why. I mean, I really do support whatever unfolds, because that was my own experience. So yeah, I think mostly age-wise, most of my clients are probably in their 30s. Age-wise, I kind of seem to be all over the place. The big through line, though, is hospital birth. I don't get many home birthers. For some reason, I would love to do more home birth. They don't seek me out. And then I have plenty of people that are like, we would like to hire you. I am planning my epidural. Is that okay with you? Like, we want to hire you for an epidural. Like, don't even try and talk me out of it. And I always find that interesting, because there is always a conversation about that, where they are concerned that the doula would try to talk them out of their plan to have a medicated pain management approach. And And of course, I don't really care. Like my job, my job is just to support you. So that's who I've mostly figured out is my clientele.
Awesome.
I'm somewhere in the middle, and that's kind of where I fall in life, I think. Like I'm not really judgy overall. I like to think I'm not anyway. And I'm somewhere in the middle, right? Like you can kind of come at me with whatever pain management you have going on, and I'll work with that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a way that you describe your style as a doula?
I do. I think I am fairly active overall. I've had a few clients that have had doulas before, like where it's their second or third baby or whatever. And that has definitely been mentioned multiple times that like I'm up on my feet a lot. I'm physically helping them with hip squeezes or whatever it is. I don't even know what at this point. Like, I've been out of the birth room for so long.
Yes.
But like you're like forcing them to slow dance or, like I'm with them physically. I had one client, it was her third baby, and she described it in a way that I was like, that's so interesting. And she specifically said when we interviewed, she said, I had a doula my last 2 times. She was awesome and exactly what I needed for those births. But now I need something different. And so we deep dived into that. And she said she was older. It was kind of grandma energy. I think she used to be a midwife. So this woman had mad skill, right, as far as her knowledge. And she said, but she was not at all physical. She was not at all. But she was the calm because she had that sort of grandma doula energy that like, I've seen this a million times. She probably had like 1,000 births behind her. I mean, she was like, and was more the holding space doula. And she said, I am hiring you because you are high energy and I want you present with me. I want you like doing a hip squeeze, like hard. And she said that tends to be what she wants in labor because it was her third baby and she knew her body. And she was like, to this day, one of my most active clients in the most beautiful way. Like she was doing squats. I mean, she was so amazing. And, anyway, so she hired me because of my energy. And so I think I can safely say I have a lot of energy. I bring it to the room. I don't think I'm like loud with my energy, but I don't peter out. That's where I excel. I don't know why, but I can go really long hours and still at least pretend that I'm really awake.
Good.
Even if I'm not.
Yes. That could be important.
Before I was a doula, I was an actress. Actually, my degree is in theater. And so it very much comes in handy.
That's awesome.
Where it also comes in handy is actors are trained, like part of our training as actors is understanding how to not bring our baggage into the room. And I think that's a big through line that doulas have, right? Like we stop, and postpartum doulas and birth doulas, right? Like you can't bring your day's worth of energy into that space. And you have to be able to like stop at the door and walk in as if nothing is coming with you, right? And so I think I see that as directly connected to my acting background because that was where I learned how to do that. Awesome. It might be all lies. My kids might have been having 20 meltdowns before I walked in that room, but I mostly will not bring that into your space.
Awesome. That's fabulous. Okay, well, how can people reach you if they're a potential client or they want to hear more?
Yes. Gosh, I think, so I am, all the normal ways, right? So I'm at doulagemma.com is my website. Text is always fast and easy for me. And I'm also part of an awesome birth collective, Capital City Birth Collective. And that's a great one-stop shop for parents as well. Because as I've said before, like choosing your doula is energetic, right? And so
Mhm.
you don't want to necessarily just stop on the first website that intrigues you. So going to a birth collective can be really handy because you can compare people against each other, not in a weird icky way, but just like in a like, oh, she's interesting and she's interesting, and then reach out to a few different people. We're in the middle of actually revamping our website, but if you just type into Google Capital City Birth Collective, that will come up. And so yeah, any of those ways, we're very easy to find.
Awesome.
And I think on Facebook, I'm also doula Gemma is probably, I'm lucky with a unique name because there are not many Gemmas. So typing doula Gemma in whatever medium, Google or Facebook, and I'll pop up.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you want to add that we didn't say?
Gosh, I don't think so. I am looking forward to the world spinning forward at some point. I think the
Yes.
vaccine, I should mention that the vaccine is really starting to change things now. So, I'm starting to do in-person births. I've booked my first one is actually next month. And
Yay.
so yes, in our area, doulas met the medical requirement as we have spoken about. And
Yes.
so that is awesome. So I am fully vaccinated, and I have still some concerns. I think we all have COVID protocols that are different. I think that's something that everybody should be asking their doula, like, what's your thing? How are you handling this? Because we're all handling it different. There's no overseeing body, right? Of like, there's nobody telling us what to do. My choice is, I'm just pulling it out of articles I've read to figure out how to keep me safe and how to keep my clients safe. But everybody is doing it differently. So I think that in the era of COVID, people should be asking questions around that and should ask about, are you vaccinated? Are you seeing other clients? How much face-to-face are you doing? What's the PPE situation? And stuff like that. I think that would be really smart in this weird time period.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I just want to again express my appreciation. Thank you for helping me get vaccinated.
Yay!
I'm like, yoo!
Oh my God.
Step one
It's so
down,
great.
one
It's
more
so
to
great.
go.
When's your second dose? Probably a couple.
On February 20th.
Okay. Yay. Awesome. It's such a sigh of relief. Now I'm really hoping that we can I'll wake up one morning and there will be poof, an article that says people who are vaccinated don't pass it.
Right.
That's the next science.
That is the next one. Yes. Yes. That is the part that concerns me. I'm like, I'll be good in just a few more weeks.
Right.
But I
So-
don't want to bring it home to my family.
That's right. That's right. I just actually, I'll send you this offline, but I've been deep diving on goggles to wear. So like N95 paired with goggles, and they have some like shockingly cute kind of more glasses that are actually goggles. And
Interesting.
doulas, both postpartum, well, I guess as a postpartum doula, you probably work fewer hours in a row. But one of my concerns is comfort, right? Like that legitimately, I'm going to be in an N95 and goggles for potentially 15, 20 hours, right? Like
Right.
that's intense. And so I have some nervous energy around that. So as I'm ferociously reading Amazon reviews, I'm like, comfort. I'll look like a dork, but like, is it comfortable?
Yes, right.
Oh. So yeah, the vaccine, man. And I'm curious too, how that will shift. Like we are all going to see different shifts. I think I'm curious if the hospitals will start if there's going to be a requirement, like you can have your doula as long as she's vaccinated, so that's being discussed of like, might they do that? This is just whispers, right? Of like,
yeah, right.
Going to happen. I wonder how it shifts when when our husbands are vaccinated, then does our concern go down? Right now I'm much more concerned of like, okay, I want to work with clients that are also taking this seriously, right? That like I'm choosing people that I feel that there's a trust there, right? So it's weird. It's so weird. I just revamped my entire contract to be COVID, like to have a COVID policy in there.
Yep.
Wow, I never thought I'd have to have a COVID pandemic policy in my contract.
I know, right? Totally. I'm with you there.
Have me breathing in your space at your own risk.
Yes. Right.
But
not on the radar.
oh God, but
At
hopefully
all.
with all the PPE, proper PPE, I mean, I do think that goes a long way. So like, whatever. I'm well read with that stuff.
That's awesome. Well, this is so fun.
Yes. Thanks for doing this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.